Welcome back. Today's episode is about Haitian immigration to New York City. Much of the information in this episode is derived from the scholarship of Queens College professor, another CUNY professor, Francois Pierre-Louis. So to start, we're going to have to go way back, way before Haiti was called Haiti, to look at the emergence of this island and what it would become, and how it would impact the immigration patterns to New York City. We have to start with the island of Hispaniola. So the island was formerly divided, with the French taking what is today Haiti, the western half of Saint-Domingue. This becomes the main port of entry for African slaves. Just to give you some context here, a little less than 400,000 Africans were stolen from Africa and imported to what would become the United States over the whole history of slavery in the United States. By contrast, around 750,000 were stolen from Africa and brought to Haiti. And this is tied to a few different things, but partially it's due to the nature of slavery in Haiti, which was perhaps the highest death rate in the Western Hemisphere. Slaves were literally worked to death on the sugar plantations of Haiti. Sugar becomes the crop of the Haitian colony, which is a colony of France, where by the end of the 18th century, Haiti is producing around half of the world's sugar. In this atmosphere, however, you constantly have a replenishing of enslaved populations from Africa, and this allows the enslaved community in Haiti to maintain strong cultural structures tied back home. Many of the enslaved people in Haiti also weren't born into slavery, right? So they had a conception of what freedom was, and it was something that was taken away from them. And finally, a lot of them had military experience, catalyzed by fighting wars in Central and Western Africa. So just to set the scene, on the eve of the Haitian Revolution, you have a population that has roots to back home, has a sense of identity and community beyond this life of bondage that has been forced upon them. They are facing extraordinarily brutal conditions, with their friends, neighbors, family members being worked to death in sugar plantations. And on the eve of the Haitian Revolution, there's another revolution that breaks out in France itself, where hierarchies, as they had previously existed, were challenged and being rethought in new ways. Now Haiti is a slave society, not a society with slaves, meaning that enslaved persons do all of the jobs. And in this capacity, they have access to information that maybe other enslaved groups wouldn't have, right? So when the revolution breaks out in France, when hierarchies are being challenged in France, these are things that the enslaved Haitian population will know about. So 2 years after the French Revolution breaks out, a revolution breaks out in Haiti as well. The revolt was catalyzed by the famous Bois Caïma ceremony, which held symbolic significance for the rebellion. Around 1,000 enslaved peoples turn on their masters. So even though you have this revolution going on in France that are upending hierarchies, it's still an extraordinarily racist society, right? And so initially the French Revolution sends about 10,000 troops to quell this uprising of enslaved peoples, right? They're just horrified by the idea that these French plantation owners who look and talk like them could be killed in retribution for centuries of truly awful violence against these enslaved populations. The French revolutionary troops, they're pretty effective. They have the Haitian rebels in pretty bad shape, right? The rebels were starving. Many surrendered individually. Toussaint Louverture, who will emerge as a leader in the Haitian Revolution, he wants to create a deal, right, with the plantation leaders and with the revolutionary government. He brought some white prisoners to trade, and he was offering to return almost to the status quo that existed before the Haitian Revolution broke out. Enslaved populations would be returning to the plantations, maybe with slightly more protection, but still as enslaved peoples, while only revolutionary leaders would be guaranteed their freedom. The reaction of the white planter class was unrelentingly hostile. A white slave owner in Port-au-Prince said in 1792, I swear that you will see all of my blood flow before I consent to your freedom, because your slavery, my fortune, and my happiness are inseparable. This reaction by white colonists, as well as things being re-examined in France itself, had French authorities re-examining their entire policy of slavery in the late 1700s. The biracial population in Saint-Domingue were guaranteed equal rights around this time, outraging the white plantation class. The absolutism of white supremacy, the absolutism of the logic and justice of slavery was being challenged by French authorities. The French plantation owners invited the British to come in and take over the colony, right? This was an act of rebellion against the French Revolution. And so in response, the French Revolution freed all the slaves and allied with the revolting slaves against the English and against the French colonists who had previously dominated the Saint-Domingue slave economy. So the Haitian revolutionaries, along with their allies in the French Revolution, they won, right? They emerged victorious against the planters, the white planters in Haiti. And this was good for a few years. However, in 1799, Napoleon Bonaparte took power in France, and Napoleon was no friend to Africans. He said, "My decision to destroy the authority of the blacks in Saint-Domingue is not so much based on consideration of commerce and money as on the need to block forever the march of blacks in the world." He, in 1802, reverses course on emancipation. Now imagine having fought and won your freedom, right? And then being told by somebody thousands of miles away, not really, right? This led to another revolt. About a third of the Haitian population would be killed in this revolt. Tens of thousands of French troops would die as well. But the Haitians would emerge victorious and in 1804 declare their independence. In this moment, Haiti becomes the second nation in the hemisphere to emerge independent from a European colonial power behind the United States, but the first to do so in a revolution that was for and by marginalized groups, right? In the United States, you had wealthy settlers from Europe who won a revolution to break away and form their independence from Great Britain. In Haiti, it was quite different, right? The revolution was against both the white plantation owners and the French state. This black nation, the most successful slave revolt in history, emerged as an independent nation on the world stage. Now we celebrate this today, right? This is a monumentous moment of marginalized groups fighting and achieving their freedom, throwing off the shackles of slavery and white supremacy. This is an amazing moment, but I want you to put yourself in the mindset of 1804 world leaders from Europe and the United States, all of whom were white, wealthy men. In the United States at the time, you had President Thomas Jefferson, right? One of the largest slave owners in the entire United States, right? How is he digesting the news that a successful slave revolt has triumphed over a white planter colony within his hemisphere? He's pretty horrified. And Jefferson's quote in reaction to this is, "We should confine this disease to its island, not allowing the blacks to own ships." The idea of Jefferson, and for leaders for 6 decades after the success of the Haitian Revolution, was to isolate Haiti, right? These images of white people being killed and beaten by formerly enslaved Haitians was horrifying to the white elite in the United States. In Cuba, in the United States, throughout the Western Hemisphere, white elites would crack down on their enslaved populations for fear of something like this happening in their own society. But this doesn't mean that Haiti was completely isolated. Haiti, in fact, was inspirational to the nations around it, including serving as a safe haven for Simón Bolívar in 1815, and in 1816, providing arms to Bolivar and convincing him that his revolution in South America needed to be centered around the idea of emancipating enslaved population. Haiti also becomes an intellectual center for Black thought, right, in a way that could only exist in a Black nation in the early 19th century. Yet this legacy of becoming sort of a symbol for Black power against slavery all served to isolate Haiti from wealthy countries throughout the world, particularly the United States and Europe. None of these nations will recognize Haiti because they're waiting on France to do so initially. And France won't recognize Haiti because they're still mad that Haiti earned their independence by defeating the French. It wasn't until 1825 Haiti will be recognized by France, and only after agreeing to pay France for its lost property on the island. What was its lost property? It was namely enslaved Haitians. The Haitians had to pay the equivalent of $21 billion. The debt was not paid until 1947. The United States would not recognize Haiti until 1862, when it was fighting its own civil war over the question of slavery. In the late 1880s and early 1990s, Frederick Douglass was the Minister Resident and Consular General of the United States in Haiti, serving as the representative of the U.S. to the Haitian government. He found himself caught in between different objectives, right? He wanted to be there as a friend to a sovereign Haitian nation that he drew inspiration from as the first pioneering slave revolt that really planted the seeds of emancipation in the minds of Africans across the continent. However, he was there representing the interests of an increasingly imperial United States government that wanted to have a naval base on Haitian land. Frederick Douglass would resign in frustration in 1891, feeling unable to serve U.S. interests and maintain moral clarity. He would speak later in his life about U.S. hypocrisy and his support for a sovereign Haiti. He would later say in front of a Black audience, "We should not forget that the freedom you and I enjoy today is largely due to the brave stand taken by the Black sons of Haiti 90 years ago. Striking for their freedom, they struck for the freedom of every Black man in the world." In December 1914, unofficial U.S. Consul to Haiti, Roger L. Farnham, helped convince Secretary of State Williams Jennings Bryan to send Marines into Haiti's Banque Nationale. Farnham made off with the modern equivalent of $2.66 million, which he deposited in National City Bank of New York, where he served as vice president. Without this money, Haiti predictably defaulted on its debt payments, which became part of the justification for the U.S. occupation of the nation that lasted from 1915 until 1934. The island that had been independent since the ousting of the French in a slave revolt over 100 years earlier was now occupied by the United States. Immediately, we start changing laws. The U.S. government says for the first time since the Haitian Revolution that white people can own property in Haiti, and Haitians become a expendable labor source for U.S. companies throughout the Caribbean. A U.S. trained and managed police force took hold on the island. Haiti's infrastructure projects became built for foreign capital, meaning coal operations or plantations would now be connected to ports to easier export the material. These were built under U.S. military or corporate supervision and by exploited Haitian labor. The nation's roads were built by Haitians, conscripted to work for U.S. Army engineers and paid literally nothing. In Senate testimony, Farnham revealed that occasionally Haitians conscripted to infrastructure projects were shot for trying to escape. A few minutes later, in the same Senate testimony, he was talking about how difficult it was to overcome trust issues with the Haitians. He explained that Haitians worried that under the U.S. occupations, quote, they would be made to be slaves. That is the fear that is upmost in the minds of Haitians, as ignorant as they are, while literally they're being paid nothing to build these roads for U.S. business projects. In the 1950s, the United States was growing increasingly anxious about its grasp on the world. It was the context of the Cold War, right? There was competition between the Soviet Union, which was a communist country, and the United States, which was a capitalist country. And so they were looking for allies, no matter who or what they were, throughout the world to represent their interests. In 1957, they found an ally they could really count on in the form of Francois Duvalier. Duvalier, he grew up relatively wealthy. He would go to the University of Michigan. He won the election in 1957, but very quickly became a dictator, declaring himself dictator for life in 1964. His repression was pretty brutal. Between him and his son, perhaps 100,000 Haitians were killed. Again, these guys were backed by Western powers. Papa Doc, in his 1957 election, runs on a campaign of black power, right, taking some power away from some of the mixed race folks who had emerged as elites in Haiti in the century and a half after independence. And so this led to an exile of some of those elites, right? Some of those lighter-skinned Haitians. In the 1960s alone, about 5,000 would come to the United States, most of them settling in NYC. The first kind of area where Haitians would settle would be the Upper West Side, but very quickly a larger community emerges in Flatbush, Brooklyn. The Duvaliers also really undermined the Haitian economy in dramatic ways, right? They were pushing neoliberal reforms. They wanted to increase foreign investment and promote plantation-style agriculture. This would ruin the self-sustaining agriculture that existed beforehand, make a whole new class of unlanded peasants in Haiti. It would further lead to deforestation, which becomes a huge issue in Haiti, eroding the land and the soil, and getting rid of many of the trees, right, to protect Haiti from natural disasters. This was a policy promoted both by the United States and the World Bank, who were backing the Duvaliers. Wages dropped significantly during this period because of these economic reforms. Because of this economic situation over the course of the 1970s, nearly 100,000 additional Haitians would choose to flee the island for the United States because of this brutality and economic decline. So as the New York City population grew, particularly throughout the 1980s, the ethnic enclave in Flatbush became really strong. Haitian-owned grocery stores emerged, restaurants, businesses, newspapers published in Creole and French, and for the second generation of Haitians, in English as well. Community and cultural organizations became spaces where newly arrived immigrants could seek jobs, find help translating documents, or hear the latest political news back home. These are the same sort of community structures that emerged in nearly every immigrant group that came in large numbers to New York City over the course of its history. Opposition leaders to Baby Doc emerged in this community, including Wilson Desir. He was forced to flee Haiti in 1970. When he helped lead a failed revolt against Francois Duvalier. He came to New York City and ran a center that sought to provide refuge for Haitians fleeing the dictatorship. Wilson Desir's office on Eastern Parkways offered employment services, banking services, information, and welfare services to newly arriving Haitians. His office was also the center for organizing against the regime back home. The number of Haitians in the United States more than doubled in the 1980s. By the 1980s, it wasn't those wealthy earlier Haitian immigrants. The 1960s, when the Duvaliers first took power, these were really the poorest rung of Haitian society who had been burnt by the economic and agricultural reforms pushed by the United States and the World Bank that impoverished a lot of formerly self-sufficient farmers in Haiti. And they were arriving thousands every month. People were really desperate to get out of the economic and political situation in Haiti. The crafts that they were riding on were oftentimes not seaworthy. An untold number died on the journey from Haiti to the United States on these crafts. But around 100,000 did reach the United States in this way. The United States treated them very poorly upon their arrival. Many were incarcerated in the United States and deported back to Haiti, where sometimes they would be thrown into prison or tortured or killed by Baby Doc. This contrasted greatly from a mass migration of Cubans that was ongoing at the same time. The newly arrived Cubans who were leaving communist-controlled Cuba were arriving at the end of the 1970s and early 1980s, being met with quick paths to residency and financial assistance. The Haitians, however, were very much criminalized and treated as unwanted immigrants, much in the same vein that other groups discussed in this series had been in the past. Still, these Haitian communities in both Miami and New York were growing in large numbers, right? And to accommodate this growth, new community centers were founded in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan. So that gave health services, helped Haitians with aid prevention. It was a resource for domestic violence and family services as well for the Haitian communities. These new arrivals also helped with the organization against the Duvaliers. By pointing out the evils and the atrocities of the Duvaliers, they augmented the claim for refugee status for themselves and their Haitian neighbors who were fleeing political repression and economic repression back home. This also brought global attention to the brutality of the Duvaliers, which put pressure on their allies like the United States government to stop supporting their dictatorship. This growing awareness of the aspirations of the Haitian population in New York City did little to mitigate the stereotypes and racism they faced. Haitians were targeted by the police. They faced stereotypes that associated them with HIV and the Haitian population, so much so that the CDC in the 1980s wouldn't allow Haitians to donate blood. Using kind of the anti-Haitian discrimination that they faced, Haitian leaders in the United States were able to link the refugee crisis directly to the US-backed dictatorship of the Duvaliers. A campaign in the United States was started by these Haitian refugees to shut off support for the Duvalier dictatorship. There were protests in front of the United Nations. There were anti-Duvalier radio programs that were aired all over the country. There was active efforts by the Haitian community from New York and Miami to lobby members of Congress, all pursued to great effect in undermining U.S. support for their longtime ally, the Duvaliers. A popular uprising successfully overthrew Jean-Claude Duvalier in 1986. And the United States did not rush in to save the dictator, even though it was in the midst of the Cold War, where the United States was sending troops and arms throughout the Caribbean basin to try to shut down the spread of communism. A whole wave of Haitian leaders would leave New York City, as many of those leaders returned to Haiti seeking to nurture political aspirations back in their country of origin. This allowed a whole new group of leaders to take control of the Haitian community in New York City. These leaders were focused on becoming more integrated into the urban environment where they found themselves, particularly in Brooklyn. They organized protests after Haitian immigrant Abner Louima was tortured by the NYPD. Haitian law enforcement organizations formed in response to Louima's assault by NYC officers. The Haitian American Alliance formed after 1986, and their focus was voter registration, after-school programs, and promoting citizenship among the Haitian population. Their efforts to get an elected member to city council was finally successful in 2007, with the election of Mathieu Eugene from Flatbush, who cultivated support from the English-speaking Caribbean population as well in the neighborhood. With the overthrow of the Duvaliers, unfortunately, Haiti still had a hard road of recovery. Centuries of poverty enforced by isolation and imperialist policies of the United States could not be erased by the overthrow of one dictator. Still, there was hope. In 1990 and again in 2000, Jean-Bertrand Aristide was elected president. He was a Catholic priest, and in Haiti he promoted liberation theology, which was the idea of using faith to help the masses. He invested heavily in education. He worked with Cuba, which had some of the best doctors in the world, to improve the health system in Haiti. He was supported by the New York City Haitian community as well, with Desir mentioned before, serving as Aristide's Haitian consul general in New York City. However, his was an anti-neoliberal movement. In that way, he made many enemies, including wealthy Haitians and U.S. investment. The United States backed the overthrow of his government in 1991 that led to 4 years of military rule and saw thousands more Haitians seeking refugee status in the United States. By 2009, there were around 500,000 Haitians living in the United States and around 150,000 living here in New York City. That number only grew after the devastating earthquake in 2010 that displaced 1.5 million Haitians. The diaspora here in New York City and Miami organized relief efforts, with money going directly to rebuilding hospitals, homes, and schools. However, the devastation was immense. Many more Haitians have immigrated to New York City and the United States more generally since the earthquake. They continue to be instrumental to the fabric of our city, contributing meaningfully, culturally, economically, in modern movements for social justice, as evidenced by testimonies given and voices from the heart of Gotham, in every way in all 5 boroughs.